It's as disrespectful as calling someone born with red hair into a second marriage stepchild, a redheaded stepchild. It's just as disrespectful. It's wrong. It's not junk. It's just pre-65 constitutional silver. The reason it used to be called that, I mean, I started doing this, silver was $3 and $4 an ounce, and no one wanted it in the 90s, right? And so it meant that it had no premium. Yeah, I could buy it at 10 cents back a spot back then, maybe something like that, barely back a spot. But it just meant that it had no premium, and it's a name that has, in the very woke world what we've lived in the last several years, that name wouldn't fly. Right, it's very prejudiced to its real value, and it's not right.
It's microaggression. It's
yes, that's what it is.
Misgendering, mislabeling silver.
That's what it is. I mean, in a funny sort of way, it's the exact same thing. It's not. It's constitutional silver that has 90% silver. Now, people never really understand what that means. It just means 90% of its weight. In $1,000 face value, if it were uncirculated, there would be 723 ounces of pure silver. But the industry will guarantee 715 ounces. In other words, they say up to 8 ounces could be worn off of 1,000 face through being running through coin counters for 50, 60 years. It's actually probably almost exactly 720 ounces. But so, in other words, you take that and divide it out, a dollar's face is 0.715 guaranteed of pure silver. Whether that be 10 dimes, 4 quarters, 2 half dollars, or $1/2 and 5 dimes, 2 quarters and 5 dimes, 2 quarters and $1/2. Any way that you can make $1 of pre-65 silver, any way between dimes, quarters, and $1/2 is 0.715 to 0.723 ounces of pure silver, period. And the 90% is just by weight because it was used as currency. The other 10% is alloy to give it strength so it doesn't get all goofy and bend and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so this just may be an inefficiency in the market here, folks, where it is just, sneered at a little bit more than it should be. And again, you're just going to have the mathematics of scarcity at your back over a long enough time frame here as more and more of this stuff goes out of the world because it gets melted down into a different form. Okay, so you were talking earlier too, little by little, kind of until the world wakes up and realizes this is a game of musical chairs, and then there's the scramble. And that's when things can go crazy in terms of silver price. That might be somewhat of what's going on here. Sounds like what you're saying, Andy, is probably to a certain extent, but you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of how crazy this could get. I do just want to reiterate the mining exec that I was having lunch with the other day. He was talking about the dynamics in the industry, and he was like, "Oh yeah, and well, I mean, now that Tether's in the space, and I mean, they're one of our backers now." He's like, a big part of running a mine in the past was securing the capital to actually continue exploration and develop the mine. So he had a lot of stories about mines that were selling for cheap because nobody had put any money in them for decades. And then once, a new CEO was able to raise enough capital, they could bring that mine back to life and realize a lot of value pretty quickly, right? He's now saying with Tether in the industry, man, you get Tether invested in your company. He's like, your capital raising need's done. Like it's a bottomless
Tether was
market.
at the Beaver Creek Mining Summit, which is the biggest mining summit in the country. We've talked about Bo Hines, who's the CEO of USA Tether, their new division, who was Trump's crypto czar. We've talked about what they will do with the interest on the stable coins. By January 1, 2027, we will all be moving money on the stablecoin network, a blockchain network backed by stablecoins. Those stablecoins then are backed by U.S. Treasuries. The interest is not transferable. Tether keeps it. USA Tether will be the primary beneficiary of this. Tether already has over 14 billion in gold, more gold than anyone in the world except central banks. They're going to continue to buy gold and silver, which continues to devalue the dollar, continues to push these assets higher. These are all part and parcel, I think, of what they're trying to ultimately do. You're right. And you are beginning to see these kind of vehicles where it's not just the normal market dynamics. I think you can really see, and again, ask yourself, who's bringing in all this metal? As I mentioned, in December, there were 3.706 million ounces of gold that were delivered in December, plus 64.730 million troy ounces of silver.
Silver.
64.730 million troy ounces of silver issued. But in the first 3 days of this new January contract, first 3 days, we've seen 4,249 gold contracts, 3,596 silver contracts. That's 424,900 ounces of gold, 17,980 ounces of silver come into COMEX in 3 days.
Wait. Now, 3 days of January is bigger for gold than the entire month of September? Did I take my notes right?
That was December. Okay. In December, there were 3.706 million troy ounces of gold in the whole month of December. In the first 3 delivery days of
January,
there was 424,900 ounces of gold.
Oh, okay.
So not yet.
Not yet.
And 18 million ounces of silver in 3 days. Now ask yourself, if a mint box of silver, which is 500 ounces, weighs 42 pounds, who's bringing in 18 million ounces of silver in 3 days?
Right.
But this is every single month. And to me, the biggest crime in all of this is, where is this moron Jim Cramer, and where are all these talking heads who are so intellectual and so invested in helping the public understand what's happening? Nobody is talking about this. I've been screaming about it. This is all you need to know, you guys. This is it. The most well-informed traders in the world here in the United States, you could argue that's Wall Street, are bringing in billions of dollars every month. Billions. I mean, in December, what is 3.706 million ounces of gold times 4,400? What's 3.7 million times 4,400? Your calculator will go nuts. What is it? It's into the billions. But this is every single month for 13 months now, since last November when he won the election. And that's all you need to know. The most well-funded and well-informed traders.
It's not just these big players that are taking delivery and buying the minted ounces, right, or the smelted ounces, or whatever you want to call them. It's also big players securing their ownership of the metal in the ground, right? That's what the Tethers of the world, now the Samsungs, are starting to do, right? And so the point is you have kind of, almost almost price-insensitive buyers entering the space now, because it's not about the price for them. It's about the actual supply of the metal itself. They need that. Well, some need it commercially, like Samsung does, and then others are aware of that and just saying, "Well, look, I want to stockpile as much of this as possible because the world is only going to want it more tomorrow than they want."
China's been doing it for 2 years. China's been buying silver and gold doré and concentrate for 2 years or longer, pre-production, pre-refining. It disintermediates the market. That's exactly what Tether is doing. They're disintermediating the market. My friend Keith Newmeyer told me a year ago, he said, maybe 2 years ago, he said that he was at a conference speaking, probably right as we were coming out of the pandemic, and saying, "This is the first time I've ever seen auto manufacturers at the conferences I'm speaking at coming directly
for folks who don't know, Keith Newmeyer is the CEO of First Majestic Silver, one of the largest pure play. Well, it's not quite a pure play, but one of the largest silver miners out there.
Yeah, in terms of pure silver, they are, I think, the purest of all of them. And that's only about 60% of what they do is silver. I'm pretty sure they are number one in terms of purest, which goes to show just how hard it is to mine silver these days. Of all of the 850 plus million ounces mined last year, only roughly 170 million came from companies like Keith's. The majority of it, because it's depleting in nature, it's found up on top, like your skin is epidermis. It's found in something called epithermal near the top. So the big deposits are gone. It's mostly byproduct of copper, zinc, and lead, and they stumble across it. So it's becoming harder and harder and harder to find. But he said, yeah, they're coming right up to the conferences to disintermediate the entire marketplace. But that's what China's been doing. Sean Kuhn, who is the CEO of Dolly Varden, has told me this a year ago. Yeah, Andy, they're coming by the drove. They go to Mexico and Peru, number 1 and 3. China, number 2, largest producers of silver in the world. Buy the bars in doré form, buy the concentrate, a byproduct sludge, if you will, of the mining process, pay double what the West will, ship it back to China to refine it. It's the same thing that we see now happening The big money is doing all they can, whether it be Tether or the Chinese or Samsung, and I'm sure there's a lot more that isn't getting publicity. They understand that this is a depleting asset, one that has, you need it, or you can't make your product, or you can't have an advanced civilization in AI, robotics, high-tech military, all of these things. And that's why Trump made it a critical mineral in my mind.